All right. I always think like what happens before record is always interesting. And there should be like outtakes of this stuff.
Oh, no doubt, 100%.
How are you today?
Good. I'm doing good. I'm doing good. I'm glad the Dr. D's can get together.
That's right. Let's do Dr. D plus Dr. D here.
That's right.
Oh,
That's
you're
right.
doing some interesting work. I remember we were talking, and for the audience, a lot of times I'll have conversations with guests before they come on the show just to chat, make sure there's no psychos waiting in the wings. It's like,
I've been there.
you're like, oh, I've been there. I've been fortunate. I haven't had really maybe a few. It's been like, this is weird. But mostly I think it's good to get the feel out. But you were working with laborious workers, right? That's who you're working with. And I hadn't
Yes.
heard that term. I mean, it makes sense now that I think about it, but talk a little bit about that, like in your work, like maybe just defining what that population is.
Sure. So I own a company called Accelerate Therapy and Performance. And what we do is we go in and we shift the paradigm of what employment is, especially with hardworking men and women who make products and get things from here to there to make our world go round. And instead of them thinking of themselves as laborers, we want them to think of themselves as industrial athletes. And so with an industrial athlete, when you frame yourself in that mindset of, I need to take care of my body because my body is how I'm making a living, instead of let me beat this thing into the ground until it
Yeah.
doesn't work anymore. Because of an athlete, especially an athlete who makes a living doing their sport, it's the same. It's the exact same thing. So we go in and act as the athletic trainer, the physical therapist on site in house with clients to help their employees be well and feel well. So we're essentially their go-to person for any ache pain problem that they might be having on the care side. And then on the coaching side, we're that strength and conditioning coach going in to say, hey, that movement pattern that you're doing, that's what's causing your back pain. That's what's causing your shoulder issue from happening. And let's start changing you and conditioning in a different way.
Well, let's talk about like, I think be good for the audience to know like what are some at this point in society typical laborious space or industrial athlete based jobs, like listing
Yes.
those things. Yeah.
So anybody working in a warehouse. So you think about distribution centers like Amazon distribution centers, grocery store distribution centers, those types of places. Any of the big retailers have distribution centers that they're pulling from. So any client like that is who we're looking at for the warehousing side to help. And then as far as manufacturers, there's so many great companies making great things in America, and some of them take a lot of diligence and pain and detail to do, whether it be putting electronics on a board, welding things on a board, putting together products to be shipped out like water meters or cars, or
Yeah.
you know even how t-shirt, how does a t-shirt become a t-shirt, right?
Mm.
So to see those people that help products go from raw wool to yarn, I mean, that's a process, and there are people involved in that process to make that yarn, and then that yarn goes somewhere else to become a t-shirt. So those are the kinds of companies we help day in and day out.
Okay. I mean, it's awesome. What's that initial conversation like um, with workers, industrial athletes, and like what are they surprised about when you talk
Yeah.
with them?
Yeah. So, somebody like you, Darren, who has that background in social connection and wanting to connect, the first thing we have to do is build a relationship with
Yeah.
somebody, right? We want to get to know them. And that's really, really important. And so we lay the foundation of just getting to know people and letting them know that we're their frontline healthcare provider, to help them with any ache pain problem that they might be having. And then once they know, like, oh, this person really is here for my personal well-being, so that I'm feeling good during the day at work, so I can go home and do all those things I want to do at
Yeah.
home and come back and still perform at my job. That person's there for me. So once we have that established, that's the first thing. And then we can get into the coaching and
Yeah.
this is how we do your job better and all that kind of stuff.
Did you ever think like, do you use the word industrial athlete with them? And
all the time.
what do they think about that when you say that?
So it's funny that because this has been in my paradigm for quite a while.
Okay.
So it usually seems pretty novel, and they're like, oh, some people just blow me off, right? Yeah, whatever. Um, but there are a lot of, there are a lot of athletes out there who don't think they need to practice either.
That's
So,
true.
right, right. So, and a lot of times a person will come in and I say, as a new employee, and I say, look, like if you do this job, like you're training for a competition to do it the best possible, then you're going to treat your body that much well. This is a work when you come to work, if you're going to be lifting boxes and pushing and pulling carts and doing all that day, approach it like an athlete would. So they did this study on housekeeping staff at a big hotel chain, and half of them, they presented like, this is what you do all day every day as a housekeeper, and then this other group, they said, this is what you do every day all day, and this is how many calories you're burning, and this is the kind of foundation you're building as far as health goes. And then they watched them and saw the results of that, and just by letting that group know, like, hey, you're burning calories, you're becoming fit, you're becoming strong because of this work, this group actually did. Like they became more fit, their cardiovascular health improved, they reduced their body mass, they like versus this placebo group, or this base group. So yeah.
Essentially, basically explaining to them, like saying, well, this is what you're actually doing, change their mentality. Like, oh, like they didn't think about it that way.
Mhm.
It seems like is
Right.
what they were saying. Like just shifting the mindset of like, no, 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 this is what is actually happening when you're there.
That's right. Have you ever had that moment where that happened to you, Darian, where you're like, oh, I never even thought about it that way. This is exactly what I'm doing.
It's been a while since I
Yeah.
thought about. So I really have to. I think I have to like really think about like when's the last time I had kind of that epiphany
Mm-hmm.
about something. I know it's happened. It's just I feel like I have to think about it because I feel like I think about the work that I do and the people I interact with, and I'm very aware of what's happening when
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing it. I would say like, okay, I got something. It was probably about halfway into, like I've been in the training business 22, 23 years now. Probably halfway into it, I go, oh, this is about personal relationships.
That's
This
right.
is mainly about relationship building. If I can be great at making people feel a certain way and letting them know that this is relationship building, this is going to sustain my business.
Mm-hmm.
Versus in the past, it was in the beginning, it was mainly about the exercises, the progressions. These are
Mm-hmm.
important. I'm not saying they're not, but it was very much an academic pursuit and training versus a social emotional pursuit in that. So,
Yeah, a lot of my PTs that come on board with us, it's that third year that they
mm-hmm.
realize, like they make this leap of, oh, I'm the PT, I'm the clinician. They're coming to me for my knowledge base, but and they appreciate that, but they also come to me because they know me and
Yeah,
they know that I have their best interest at heart. And that makes a difference. And I'll watch it happen as our PTs, like at first when they're presenting to a group, like they'll do a workshop. When I was thinking about weird people, we do free workshops, and so you never know who you're going to get
yeah,
when you do a free workshop in your group. So every once in a while you get somebody, they're like, whoa, you're that's exciting about what we're going through right now. But um you'll watch them progress to being like, here's the knee, these are the bones in the knee, to tell me what bothers you in your knee,
yeah,
and then talk about it from that perspective, because that's
yeah,
what people know. Okay, my knee hurts, it hurts when I do this, how do I fix it, right?
right,
Versus what actual bones and joints and
yeah,
muscles, like, yeah.
yeah. I know. I feel like the longer you've been around, the more you're like, yeah, I mean, it's good.
Yeah.
But it's like, man, people have to feel some type of way about you. Like
Mhm.
it's
Yeah.
really why I've been such a huge advocate in the fitness business for like we need to focus on the psychosocial aspects of being in this business. Like
I
it's
know.
just understanding origin, insertion, and adaptations to training. Again, very good, but this doesn't keep people in your
Mm-mm.
orbit. it makes you feel great that you know all this stuff, but be help people be safe, clearly.
Yeah.
But I have noticed that a lot of people come to you and their basic needs as a human to feel safe, to feel validated, are not met by a lot of their daily interactions. And you become a large part of that, actually, which is like what you're saying when you meet these industrial athletes. A lot of times that's something that's really missing in their
Mhm.
lives, but they don't think they're coming to you for that. They're like, oh, no, we're not doing that,
Right, right. And I always say, like, we're not trained psychologists or
Yeah,
psychiatrists or anything like that. But because we're helping them with their physical selves, we're impacting them in a
yeah,
positive way with their mental and emotional selves. And same with training too.
yeah,
Yes, are they with you to get this result, this physical result? Yes,
right,
but they need somebody to tell them when they're having a bad day, it's okay. We're having a bad
yeah.
day, we're going to adjust. Or when they're having a great day, we're going to push harder today. Like, they need that person in their lives to do that.
It's true. What are your thoughts? I'm just curious about this since you're working with people and what would be considered manual labor or
Mm-hmm.
laborious based jobs. What's your
Sure.
thought process about automation in
Mm,
those types of jobs?
right. So, automation's been this big word for years and years and years. I think you probably could look to the car industry. No, I don't think there's any industry other than in car manufacturing that has done it like they have, where they have truly tried to automate a lot of things out. But do we see any less auto workers today than we did 20 years ago, even
Right.
though they started this way early in
Right.
the process? We don't. So we always, I think sometimes we put our blinders on and be like, oh my gosh, my job's going away.
Yeah.
I could do that as a PT too. Like, I am not immune to that. My job could go away as a PT. That's why we have these awesome human brains,
Yes.
and we pivot, and we like, because technology gets better, automation's going to get better. Um, but with that growth, with human expansion and human knowledge, there's always more jobs. It's just a matter of, are you going to put your head in the sand and worry about it all day? Or are you going to say, hey, especially for an employee who does work, like, how do I become more valuable to my company? Or how do
Mm,
I grow a skill set here at this company that if I decide to move, I take that with me, and then
yeah.
I'm more viable in the marketplace. So I think, sometimes you have to put it in neutral and just do your job and be happy with that and go home. I have 3 kids. It would be easy for me to put myself in neutral every day and just be
Of
like,
course.
I'm do that. But I think if we're always growing our skill sets and you have employees that are engaged, and you can show them as a leader or a manager, like, hey, we have these things for you to grow, show us, demonstrate to us that you can do it, then that's motivating for employees. But yeah, as far as automation goes, it doesn't worry me. Again, I've been in
Yeah.
manufacturing plants all over. I've watched things like, for instance, there's a water meter company we used to work with, and when I started with them, probably 18 years ago, they had all these little plastic and metal parts, and they put them in the meters, and now those employees, they're not doing that anymore because the meter technology's changed.
Yeah.
They're soldering computer chips onto the meters. So there's not less of them doing that. You still need somebody to solder the chips on and build the
Yeah.
meter.
It's funny. Did they think that that would be a job doing that portion with the chips, or was that not
I'm
imagined
sure not.
before?
Yeah,
Right.
I
It's
bet
like,
it's need to manage. Yeah.
right. I think this is part of not that I've paid attention to this closely. You may have just because of the work you've done, but like the UAW strike
Mhm.
or that. And I know some component of it is pay, on also the inevitability, what seems like, of electric vehicles
Mhm.
and job replacement potential.
Mhm.
Um, but I think what's interesting is there's probably an unexpected job opportunity in the EV market that they're just
Yeah.
not thinking about. Somebody may be thinking about it,
Yeah.
but humans are not going backwards. They're
No,
not. This is an inevitable railing against the future. Usually never works.
that's right.
It's like we're not
Right.
we're not like progress pushback. Like, oh man, you know what? I don't like streaming. I'm gonna go back to VHS. It's
That's
just not
right.
happening. You know, it's like,
Where's my dish?
yeah, I mean, it's just not happening. It's the same thing with cars. It's just not happening.
Right.
Some things last. So I think it's inevitable. But it's interesting, where would that labor shift to?
Mhm. Yeah.
And will that labor be different physically than it currently is? Maybe you
Mhm.
could speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, no doubt. And again, I can see that you can talk about it in that EV market. I accidentally I love EVs, but when I travel and I don't know where I'm going, I usually try not to get an EV because I
Yeah.
don't know where all the stops are, right? Where I'm
Mhm.
going to charge. But I accidentally got an EV vehicle rented, and I was like, oh man. But you can find a gas station anywhere, but
Sure.
right now you can't find a charge station anywhere.
Right.
So what companies are making charging stations?
Right.
That it's going to be big. So, or even are the gas makers looking at that EV market and saying, hey, we can build these EV
Yeah.
stations just as easy as we can build these gas pumps.
Yeah.
So that, I always think there's a pivot. There's always a door to open, if the door closes, an open window opens somewhere is the cliche. So as long as people have their heads up and we give them the opportunity in our
Yeah.
communities to continue that. I think the hard part with manufacturing is um, when things just completely pivot. I don't know exactly why the layoffs are happening with the technology, like the LinkedIn's and all that. Like,
Yeah. I just saw that. Yeah.
pretty good layoff. I don't really know the details of that, but I think to say, okay, we're laid off. Now what? That's what
Right.
employees, if you're building, I think an employee is just as unsafe as an entrepreneur. Like, so
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
we I am truly, loyal to my team and would love for them to be loyal to me forever too. And trying to do the best I can as leader of my company.
Yeah.
But I know that not everybody feels that way. So it's easy to jump ship when you don't feel valued and valuable, or you feel like you can kind of see it coming and you feel like,
Yeah.
oh, you might get laid off, or things merge and you're like, this job's redundant.
Yeah.
I think that's the hard part, but I don't think there aren't any less jobs right now. There are a lot of jobs.
There's a lot of
There
jobs.
are a lot of jobs.
Yeah. And my
Yeah.
wife's a nurse, and they ain't laying off nobody. Nurse, I'm telling you, maybe
No,
ever. I mean, it's just like the
no,
demand is so high.
yeah.
It's incredible. But I could see, like, technology is a slippery slope
Mhm.
in companies because it changes so quickly. I
It
mean,
does.
say what you want to say about the auto industry. It is inevitable that this is pushing more towards EV, but there's still a long runway towards mass adoption. So
Yeah.
you could buffer yourself and say, what do I have to do to meet this future need or
Mhm.
future inevitability? Versus, like, you're going to work one day and they're like, hey, man, it's all over today, guys. And you're like,
Right.
what? I didn't even know. It's a different
You
deal.
want to work for the Netflix, not the Blockbuster, right? You don't want to work
Right.
for the Blockbuster who's like, let's see how long this thing will ride before it totally
Yeah.
crashes. You want to work for Netflix who said, okay, we'll do DVD mailing. Oh, well, now we're going to do streaming, and now we're building our own content.
Yeah.
So that's a really fun company to work with, no doubt. If you get a chance to work with a company that's continually innovating, but it does
Yeah.
cause a lot of like flux too.
Yeah.
There's stress and growth. But totally, I just don't, right now, if you want a job and you want to focus on what you want to do, I think there's room for you to find it. You got to maybe be a little flexible because not all
Right.
jobs are everywhere and not all jobs are online.
That's true.
But and so nursing, I think our healthcare providers are at huge risk for burnout. So we
Completely.
certainly are going to our hospital systems. These are also laborious workers.
It's
These people
true.
put in a lot of time taking care of people, moving people around, doing what they need to do, whether they're in intensive care or they're on OB ward. Like,
Yep.
people are hard to move around.
Very
Um,
hard to move around.
so like we go to our hospital systems too and say, hey, would you like us to be your, athletic trainer, your IPS in-house? And then our job is to take care of the people taking care of people.
You know what? This is wonderful. But it's interesting. I had a lady's social worker on the show a long time ago, and I said, "Well, who takes care of the social workers?" And she was like, "No one." I was
Nobody.
like, "That's crazy.
Yeah.
Actually, you're doing one of the hardest jobs, one of the most emotionally draining
Hmm.
and heartfelt jobs, and there's no counselors around for you. There's no." I'm like, "That's crazy. Like, people need assistance from other people."
Right. Yeah, I agree. I think, and I tell my social worker friends that I would be a terrible social worker because I would walk into a house and be like, ah, "You can't be here. Come with me, kid." Right? Like I would
Yeah,
be like, "This kid
yeah,
cannot live at your house. They're going to stay with me. They'll be
yeah,
fine." You know, I could like I would I get fired from that job
yeah.
because but because I couldn't strike that balance that they have. But you're right. Like, do they like you know? Are our EAP programs robust enough to even take care of the people taking care of people?
I've been a big proponent of. I think that when you're working, especially in those positions, you need to have like a weekly debrief with a
Yeah,
professional to
totally agree.
deal with all of the trauma you're taking on,
Mhm.
and you're subjecting yourself to regular trauma when you're
Yes.
working in these environments. You just are. You're seeing it. You're feeling it. You have thoughts and ideas. You should be a part of your decompress going into the weekend. So also that you don't take that or whenever you work into other parts of your life
Mhm.
and then cause this snowball effect. But it just I feel like we've had a huge resistance to taking care of the people who take care of people. For some reason, it feels like obvious.
Yeah,
Why isn't it?
right.
You know?
I mean, look at the doctor burnout rate.
Right.
Look at our nurses. You know, we these people are caring people. They want to care for people, but we've pushed them to the brink.
Yeah.
So yeah, and not that other professions aren't working hard too, but I agree.
Sure.
Like, how do we take care of them, or do we tell them to take care of themselves? Like that's the question, right? Like,
Yeah.
do we provide these programs? Do we like how cool it would be if every social worker had a 30-minute debrief with
Yeah.
their counselor every week?
Yeah.
How cool would it be?
I mean,
That'd
it doesn't even seem like it seems like an obvious thing though. Like it just is it a monetary thing? Do you feel like it's maybe organizations know, but they're like, well, this is going to, cost us money. And so, what's important to
be.
us? Yeah.
I think sometimes organizations say, well, then what's next? Or what are we giving
Oh,
up for this, right? It might be a slippery slope. Well, you're giving the social workers this. Why don't the teachers get it too?
yeah.
Yeah, and I've seen that happen at some of our companies where we go in and do workstation modifications for two
Yeah.
or three people, and then everybody else is like, "Why don't I get a workstation modification?"
Yeah.
Or you're not complaining about pain. Well, I heard all the time. What are you kidding me? So I think sometimes it feel it on the front end. It's like, okay, well, if I do this for one of my cohorts of employees, I'm going to have to do it for all of them, and they probably aren't wrong. They probably are like I am very convinced that there are housekeeping services within the hospital systems that are just as much counselors to and hearts to show and love and care to show to the people in the hospital who don't want to be there but are because they're not feeling good.
Yeah.
That what's to say they don't deserve that too, to have a
Sure.
little grief of walking in and seeing something not great. One as a student, I went through my hospital rounds, and my PT instructor and I walked into this room, and our patient was standing on his bed naked with he had his gown on as a cape,
Yeah.
and his wife is in the corner crying, right? But he's like either, I don't know if it was medications. He's an older gentleman. I don't know if it's medications or if he's in a stroke and doesn't know where
Right.
he is. Like, who knows what was going on with him? But to have to get him down off the bed safely and then console her, just because she's like, he's not like this. Why is he acting like this?
Yeah.
Console her. It's challenging, and anybody can walk in on that. It doesn't have to be
That's
just the
right.
health providers.
Yeah. It's just I mean, maybe we're trending towards a future society that says, hey, you're hired to work here. And I mean, there are steps. Like I know in some EAA programs, like EAP programs, there's 8 to 10 counseling sessions that are
Yeah,
free. right? That was never a thing before. Now it's like, all right, we mental health, we understand this, but maybe there's a future where this is all just built in. You come in here, a requirement of your work is you're going to sit down with someone every week
Yeah.
as part of because we care about you. We care about, and another thing I don't get is this going to make your workers more productive. They're going
Yeah.
to be
Oh,
happier. Like this again, it seems obvious. I mean,
right. Right. And that's what tell our employers as well, just as coming in and helping people with their physical selves. If we're training them to be more effective and efficient, that way their back doesn't hurt
yeah.
when they leave work, then they get to go home and be themselves instead
Yes.
of lay on the floor for 30 minutes and stretch before they play with their kids, right? There is a secondary consequence to their back hurting at work.
Mm,
And so if we can acknowledge that and say, hey, we're going to put somebody in place to help you train for the game so that you're well and that we're coaching you along. Yeah. I mean, we watch lost days to work plummet
right.
when we come into a company. We've had 90% reduction in lost days to work. And I bet any of those lost days to work, reduction is because we were there coaching those people along to do their job better. And mental health is the same.
It almost feels like in the past, we've had a lot of acceptance that athletes and pop culture version of athletes and
Right.
sports, everybody has a coach.
Right.
Teams have coaches,
Yeah.
individual athletes have coaches.
Mm-hmm.
This hasn't necessarily been the priority for humans in general.
Right.
Why the shift? Why do you think there is a shift happening in
Yeah.
this way?
I'm not sure why we decided to put teachers in a box, right?
Mm.
Like you have a teacher until the 12th grade, or if you go to college, and then you don't have teachers anymore. I
Yeah.
think that's thought about always having a mentor, always having a coach, and people who have coaches and mentors are usually more successful than people who just want to go out on their own and blaze their own trail. I'm always better with a coach. I'm always better with somebody saying, like, let's pivot off of that. Let's
Yeah.
pivot over here. It's definitely helped me in my business growth and dealing with things when I needed to.
I think it's really important. Actually, one of the colleges I work at, they, if you can opt into it, having a mentor, and it's awesome. I'm doing it, and I have a mentor, one of the seasoned instructors. It's just great to have someone to talk to who's been there a while. They can kind of show you the ropes, and this is valuable for all ages of
Mhm.
people.
100%.
That coaching, and again, this is a more progressive stance at a school. It's like you're coming in here. If you want it, we have mentorship available for that. I'm like all about it. And I think that's essentially kind of what you're doing as well, as you're offering the service, but also mentorship and social connection and a different way of thinking that
Yeah.
you're an industrial athlete. You're not just some person showing up to work,
Right.
you know?
Right. Employers had a good question the other day, and it really came down to employers have to show how much they care. People are going to spend at least a third of their day at work with
Yeah.
you. And we're just out of the industrial revolution. We're in the
Yeah.
information age. And so, it's really not anything about like just come in and do your job and go home. It's really about how can your day be as useful and productive for us and make you feel good that you've done a good day's work. So during the pandemic, one of our clients is a grocery store, and we're in all their distribution centers. And during the pandemic, when I would go to their facilities, like I'd almost start to cry because I would say thank you to them, because if those people didn't show up, there's no groceries on the shelves.
Right.
If all those people didn't show up, I know that the shelves were lean across any grocery store in America for a little bit. But there were people putting that stuff on pallets to go on the trucks to
Yeah.
get to the stores. And we have to be super thankful for them. I definitely do, because I cannot grow, like I can't grow a carrot, I'm just not. And can't shoot a gun. All right. Well, I can shoot a gun, but I'm not good at it. I don't
Yeah.
hit anything. So, we have to have those people caring about the work they do, making sure that things get to where we need them.
Yeah. And well, I think we're also in an age of I'm not going to be treated like that. at work type of age too, and especially younger folks. They
Yeah.
are not having it, and they will
Yeah.
leave a job in a heartbeat. It's not. This isn't your 1950s, 60s job where you just grit it out for 30 years,
Right.
you know,
Yeah. Well,
for
the
a
reward's
lot.
not on the end, right?
Yeah,
There's no reward on the end of it.
there's
There's
no
no,
reward. Yeah,
your 401k goes with you wherever you go.
that's
So it
right.
doesn't, it's not like, but if there was still a pension left at some of those places, there would people be, there would definitely be people with, this is my company. I'm going to
Yeah,
stay here because I have a reward coming for me
that's
at the
right.
end.
That's right. You have your own, in some ways, your own little golden parachute at the
That's right.
end, you know, and a
You
lot of
hope.
people stuck it out for that, even if it was really toxic
Yeah.
and bad,
Yeah.
because there was something there. And
Yeah.
you know, nowadays I feel like people were jumping jobs and stuff, but also just like, listen, I'm not going to be treated like this.
Mhm.
Like, what's the ROI for me for working here? And it
Mhm.
was usually, oh, it's the paycheck. And they're like, no, no, more than that. Like, I
Right.
don't want to feel terrible when I come here. You
Right.
know, like,
Right. Yeah, totally. And then deciding, I think a lot of people don't know what they want. I think
yeah,
a lot of times, no matter who you are, whether you're a laboring employee, you're a management person, you're a business owner, if you don't have clarity about what you want in your life in general and out of a work life, then don't complain. You have
yeah,
got to get clarity on what you want versus I don't want this. Well, that's great. Now you know what you don't want. That's good. So let's get clarity on what you do want,
yeah,
because there might be a path forward. You never know, you know, why someone's complaining. So a good manager can dig into that and say, like, let's figure out what's up with you. And
yeah.
if you just don't like it here, well, again, there's plenty of other jobs.
There's
But
other things. Yeah,
is yeah, but while you're here, we want you to do the best work as possible, and we want to treat you as best as possible. I don't
right.
think every manager, there are young, I always talk about like young managers versus seasoned managers, and approaches are all different. It's
Yeah,
pretty individualized. Um, Nobody just one day wakes up and says, I'm a manager, right?
right.
It kind of happens upon you somehow. So, yeah.
What is the biggest resistance you face when approaching a company about your work?
Um, Usually they say, well, we have a wellness program,
Mm,
right? So it's usually defining the term of what we do and how we do it. Because we are a lot different than the wellness program that you get online, to look at. We're literally a person in house. And then the next thing is they have not dug deep enough to see how um, their bottom line will respond to it.
mm,
But our clients, we have long-term clients, and they have seen that return on investment. They've leveraged the information and the data that we produce to take to their insurance companies, to tell the insurance companies, you're not going to treat us like this.
yeah.
So even companies are getting wise to,
Mm,
like, just that random 20% increase in your premiums every year. Well, why is our
right.
premium going up? Well, it just is. It just is, right? I deal with this with our medical insurance every year. Like, what's our medical insurance? Well, it went up 15%. It went up what? Like, why? We don't have any, nobody is more sick or more well at our
Yeah.
company we know of. What? And we're have the same amount of people. Why is it going? Well, it just is. That's the rate. And so I think companies are, so if they realize, like, bringing in a medically trained person in the house to do first aid will reduce their injury rates, that gives them leverage to go to their work comp companies and say, hey, like, look, we reduced our injuries by 50% this year, and you want to increase our rate
Yeah.
20%? What? So we've had companies jump ship from their work comp companies because they
Mm,
can see, like, they're like, look, we have the data, we have it. So,
yeah.
but I think they just haven't dug deep enough to see how the indirect and direct costs have truly impacted their company.
That makes sense. In your estimation, like when someone says, "Hey, we already have a wellness program,"
Mhm.
what does that usually entail when you dig into that?
Right. If they allow us to keep asking questions, a lot of times it's just, well, we do this fitness challenge, or
Yeah.
we bring, we have a nutritionist they can get online with and talk to, something like that. So it usually doesn't have to do anything with their work. Sometimes they'll have, oh, we have an ergonomist come in and do our job site assessments. and all those things are good in themselves, but they're not that relationship. They're not that healthcare relationship that people are missing in healthcare.
Yeah. Seems pretty standard. I've seen a lot of these programs, and I feel like it's kind of just a recycled same thing, pretty much. A lot of lunch and learns, incentivized, win some
Yeah,
you know,
sure.
cards or something, it's just like, big companies will do basically the same plug and play
Mm-hmm.
type of thing. And I'm always thinking, well, what's could be done differently? That's more of a radical approach to
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. And
Um,
I wouldn't say we're radical per se. Like injury prevention programs have been around for a long time. It's just the
right.
companies who have jumped on board with this is a part of our culture. That's who sees the phenomenal results of being well below injury rates
Yeah.
for industry standards.
What would be the ideal? I mean, let me backtrack. What's the future of this? Well, if you could like just create out of thin air and then be like, this is the best possible future option for doing this work, what would that be?
As far as for our
Like
clients or for
for
us?
the clients working with the companies, like what would you imagine be the greatest thing you could create with this?
Oh gosh. So if employees had access to a medical provider and an injury prevention specialist 24 hours a day at their work site, I think like you would see the whole healthcare, like you'd see a healthcare shift, first of all, because people would have access to that healthcare provider and to the injury prevention specialist, and not just a healthcare provider who's just looking out for the company. Somebody that's like, if you needed to, you have the sniffles, you go in there and chat with them about your sniffles, right?
Right.
Or you have the physical therapist or the athletic trainer and you sprain your ankle playing basketball. So, outside of work, you can still talk to them about that. They're not just there for the company.
Yeah.
So somebody who could provide that kind of care, or the team that could provide that kind of care, it scales up. It would scale up HR and environmental health and safety and all those groups to have that medically trained person and physical therapist trained person, that strength and conditioning coach
Like
there.
on site, or you're saying like on site, all these providers are on site, they're working for the company, they're whatever, they're there. You have an issue, you can see somebody pretty quickly. It sounds like basically taking away a lot of the barriers,
Right.
because when you're making appointments and stuff, there's a lot of barriers to it. But if you got to take away the barriers, then the ease of access becomes incredible. That could probably change quite a bit.
Right. So I had my team call around. I was trying to prove a point to some of our physical therapists that we are the high quality, low cost provider of care in our town. And so I had our front office call all the other clinics around to ask them, what is their cash pay?
Yeah.
If I come in to pay cash for your services, what do they cost? For us, and I'll tell you online, it's $100 for an eval and $70 for a follow-up. Okay, that's what we charge for. If you come in cash, that's what we charge.
Yeah.
We called the hospital system a couple doors down from us, $500 up to $800 for the first visit.
Wow.
For the same, for a physical therapist to evaluate you, same thing. So that's a barrier right there.
There's a massive barrier.
Because physical therapy is something you come in 2, 3, 4 times a week,
right,
to do. So,
crazy, right? It's
yeah. So we're creating barriers too,
right
by being nutty.
By being nutty. Exactly. That's what seems like really crazy about it. It's almost like the creation of barriers is a way to like not have people use the service.
Right. Boom.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Same thing with Medicare Advantage plans, right? You have your traditional Medicare insurance, and you can get on as a beneficiary of Medicare, or you can take your Medicare Advantage plan. Well, Medicare Advantage plans shifts the cost onto you. Do you get a low cost, monthly fee? Absolutely. But guess what happens when you start using the doctor?
Right.
Right. So those Medicare Advantage plans know what they're doing. They're getting way more money out of our seniors than they should. I don't mind saying that. They can,
Yeah.
have me on another podcast to argue with me about it. And but so I tell my family members all the time, I'm like, my older family members, I will pay for your Medicare Advantage or your Medicare plan versus go on your Medicare plan. So
Yeah.
I'd rather you be on something and know you're going to get all the care you need without the burden, that financial burden.
It was
Then
interesting. We've done that a lot. Like we've called around and been like, with our own stuff, we'll say, how much for cash just to pay out of
yeah, I'm
pocket
sure,
here?
yeah,
And we've done that a lot more often. It's surprising, actually, the results. And I don't think a lot of people do that, actually.
I think they should, even especially for even some bigger things like you'd be surprised MRIs and all that.
Yeah,
If you have a $10,000 deductible, you know, the MRI that the insurance company, the hospital is going to bill the insurance company $6,000 to
right.
get $3,000, but you might be able to call and get, you know, and then if you hadn't met your $10,000 deductible, you're on the hook for the 3,000.
That's right.
But if you call and you can get an MRI for $800, and then, but then you're not using your, you know, you're not
Yeah,
using, you're just paying a smaller premium,
that's
but
right. Isn't that crazy? I find that insane. Like,
so and you know, we can sit here and complain about it all day. I always say the reason why I love my company and our injury prevention programs that we do is because I feel like it's just a small way that we are helping fix the problem,
yeah,
fix healthcare by helping people not have to have that barrier,
yeah,
that financial barrier. And can you get an appointment? Do you see the same person? Do you have to tell your story over and over and
over and
over again
over.
to
Yeah,
people, you know, because you don't, you know, I'm lucky. I do have a doctor group that I know that knows me. I'm very glad. But
yeah.
if you're seeing different people all the time, you're telling different stories. And so
And most definitely. Wow. This is fantastic stuff. I'm so grateful that we have the time to speak with each other
me too.
today. The
Me
other
too.
Dr. D, both Dr. D's in the house here.
Dr. D squared. I like
D
it.
squared, that's good. So please tell everyone how they could connect with you to learn more about your work and just be interested in what you're doing.
Absolutely. So welcome to connect on to me on LinkedIn, Delaine Fowler, and then you can also reach out to our team at accelerate-pt.com. Plenty of places to go in there and shoot us a message to get more information.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for having me again.
Fantastic.